Hi, everyone. This is our country presentation on Argentina. So we wanted to provide a map so you guys can get a visualization of where Argentina is in Latin America. So firstly, we'll be talking about the colonial period. So there were two expeditions that failed before the Spaniards in 1550, who had already conquered the Inca Empire and were on the Chilean frontier, moved into Argentina. That colonialism first occurred. So they installed a turn labor system in which all of the adult males were required to work a set number of days, so the population in theory would not be overworked and they could continue to exploit them. But this went into decline after they started killing off whole villages and workers were limited. Due to this decline of workers, the Spaniards purchased slaves. To continue the labor, they focused on livestock and agricultural products for local use and to send to neighboring colonies. In Buenos Aires, horses and other cattle that were left behind from the second expedition had multiplied into thousands. While there was much to sell, they had difficulty finding labor and finding the money for exportation costs. They eventually exported their goods through Lima, which allowed for limited export from other regions and therefore a higher demand and profit. Slave trade soon expanded and many more Native Americans and Africans were sent there. Through the British Asiento contract, Britain became the sole provider of slaves. They traded slaves in illegal manufactured goods for the use of hides, tallow, and other products made from the people of the countryside, as well as silver. And then moving on to the time after Argentinian independence, through increased shipping traffic and less restriction, foreign trade was able to expand. Argentina experienced extreme demographic growth. The population had more than tripled after two generations after they split from Spain. There was also an immigration and transportation increase, which also fueled this expansion. They also found a time of political unity. In World War I, market prices, especially in terms of grain and wheat and land values, skyrocketed, leaving many farmers unable to continue their work. This caused a rivalry between the government and the extremist right wing because they were pushing for higher wages and better working conditions. After trying to recover from the economic and political struggles of World War I, the right wing had planned a coup in which they pushed for a military-driven dictatorship, and they were able to take over the presidency with little pushback. Isabella Perón, Juan Perón's wife, had after his death, had taken over the presidency, but very soon after, the militia captured her and held her under house arrest for 5 years. This allowed for what we already learned about in our lecture this past week.
So looking at more recent times, Argentina currently faces many political, economic, and social challenges. Starting with political challenges, Argentina has one of the most stable governments in Latin America, with the most popular political party being the center-left Justicial Party, formerly known as the Peronist Party. And despite being mostly stable, the government still has lots of corruption, which has resulted in low levels of public trust in the government. And the Argentinian government has also defaulted on its sovereign debt 9 times, which leads us to its biggest challenges, the economy. Argentina is one of the largest economies in Latin America, behind Mexico and Brazil. However, it hasn't been very stable. In 2021, Argentina had the 5th highest inflation rate in the world at 48%. And the problem has only continued to get worse, with a projected 2023 inflation rate of 91%. And in addition to the inflation problem, there's widespread poverty, with 4 in 10 Argentinians living below the national poverty line. And so with so much poverty, approximately 20% of the population, or 120 million people, live in slums around major cities, which highlights the wealth inequality between the luxury inner city and the poor outer city, as shown in this picture of Buenos Aires, which is the country's capital. Argentina also has various issues regarding women's and LGBTQ rights, prison conditions, and freedom of expression, with reforms often getting stuck in Congress or being pushed back to later dates.
Despite so much hardship, Argentina has flourished in its art and culture. It has a diverse cultural heritage from the indigenous communities that have lived there for millennia to the Spanish colonization in the 16th century and the preceding slave trade. There's also a large group of Italians and other Europeans that emigrated into the country in the 19th and 20th centuries. For the African influence, you can see that strongly in tango, which originated from slaves gathering to perform their traditional dances and evolved into the tango that we see today. Payador is a style of improvisational singing, which was popularized by Black communities in Argentina, and the Carnival has highlighted African dances since the 18th century. The Spanish colonization of what is now Argentina has had an enormous impact on the history and culture. Spanish is still the dominant language in Argentina, and Catholicism is the dominant religion. There is also a lot of Spanish colonial style architecture all over the cities, and the influence on the politics is enormous. The indigenous influences in Argentina are also widespread. They have roughly 600,000 people who are descendants of the native tribes that originally inhabited this country. Native communities in Argentina have their own languages, which has resulted in Argentinian Spanish being a unique blend of indigenous and Spanish languages. They have a prominent style of art and craftsmanship, which contributes to a unique artistic style in the country and largely to tourism as well. Despite the historical marginalization of these communities, they often maintain their ancestral beliefs and religions, and they are currently fighting for their rights to educate their youth and have access to their ancestral lands. All these attributes of culture combine to form a unique cultural identity in Argentina, which has many roots. And our discussion question for the class is, how has Argentina's colonial history affected the people who live there today? Thank you.